have 19,000 followers on TikTok, okay? And I know everybody, so for anyone who doesn't follow my TikTok, who just may know me from YouTube or from Facebook and came on my YouTube or from anywhere else, I have 19,000 followers on TikTok, okay? And I go on TikTok because I'm homeless right now, and I go and I ask for support to pay for hotel rooms and food to eat and stuff like that. So people actually help me. You know, I get a lot of support, and I'm very grateful for that. And so a lot of people say they want to know my story though. So I'm here to tell my life story. And so I've been promising for like the past 3 days that I'm gonna upload this video telling my life story. So I don't know how deep to go or where to even start. So I was born in New York. Okay, so when I was like, 7 years old, I moved down to North Carolina. My mother and father got divorced, and then a few years later, she got remarried, and she got us all to change out. She never asked us, right? She never asked us if we wanted to change our names. So my legal last name is not Tamargo, but my birth name is Tamargo. A lot of people on TikTok come on there talking about his real name's not Tamargo, but yes, my real name is Tamargo, but my legal name is not right now. I want to change it back anyways. So yeah, so then that happened, and then when I was 16, my mother and my stepfather, they kicked me out of the house because I was skipping school and smoking weed and just not following their rules and everything. And so my father in New York, I had been talking to him, and he said I could go live with him, but they didn't allow that while I was under their roof. But when they kicked me out, I just called him up. I was like, hey, can I come stay with you? And he was like, yeah. So I went to New York, and my father was a little bit more successful than my mother and stepfather. My mother and stepfather, they were doing pretty good when my stepfather had a good job, and my mother would work sometimes too, but sometimes she didn't work. But now I don't even know if they still have the house anymore, because they've been living with her brother who owns this trailer, who came down from New York. That's a whole other story. But the last time I stayed with them for like a few weeks, a month or two, was a few years ago, and they had no water and no electricity in the house, my mother and my stepfather. But my father in New York, he's always been doing pretty much better than them. He worked for pool companies whenever he was with my mother and stuff, and then he made his own pool company, pool cleaning business. And then eventually, sometime when I was growing up, I don't know when, but he got this idea to create this, to sell the certain parts you need to fix your pool pump instead of having to buy a new pump. And nobody was really doing that. You had to buy a new pump because they don't sell the kits on the website. So he made his own kits, and he's been doing pretty good from that ever since, and he'll have his own side companies and stuff. So he's basically what we Marxists would call petty bourgeois. He's not a super rich capitalist, but he is a member of the capitalist class. Really the petty bourgeois class. He has workers that work for him and stuff. He owns his own small business, so he's not rich by any means. He was renting for a while in New York, and it's expensive to stay on Long Island, New York. So he's always tried to make enough money to live there. And he got a new girl with two new kids, and so yeah, I stayed with him for the first time I stayed with him. I think it was only like a week or two, or maybe a little bit longer, but not too long. And then he kicked me out, even though I was working for him, helping him with his website or whatever. I was working all night for his website, doing things for his website, and then he was mad that I was sleeping all morning in the living room where I had nowhere else to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Said they didn't want me sleeping on the couch all during the day. So then I was homeless in New York. Okay, this is where the story really starts. I was homeless in New York when I was 16 years old, and I had my guitar, and I had a dream of being a musician back in the day. And I had my guitar, and I was, walking the streets, and there was a first actually when I was homeless. He lived in Rochester, New York at the time. Okay. I was born on Long Island, and he lives on Long Island again now. And I stayed with him on Long Island a few years later, and stayed there for a few months, and worked in Long Island before. But at this point in time, he was living in Rochester. This is before he moved back, like a year or two after this. They had a homeless shelter for teens in Rochester, right? So I went there, and I stayed there for a few nights. I made some friends there. We would go off and, try to pull little schemes in the city to get money for some weed, and then I would smoke with the homies, and then we would go back to the homeless shelter. And then, I started meeting a lot of people on the streets out there in Rochester. And one night they had a jazz festival on the streets there, and you're supposed to go back to the homeless shelter at 5 to eat dinner, and then at 5:30 you could go out again, but then you had to be back in at 8, And so I was like, man, I don't want to go back to the homeless shelter right now. I just want to stay out and have my guitar, and I have my case out, trying to make money playing on the street, on the closed off street, or nearby. I forgot if I was on the closed street somewhere nearby with my guitar out, playing some music. And I was like, man, this is a life, playing guitar for a living out on the streets of the city. So man, fuck the homeless shelter, man. And so I did that for a while. Every night I was just playing on the streets in the day, just wandering around. Then I met some guy. I stayed with him for a week. I paid him like $40 for a week. It was pretty cheap. And I even got a dog from somebody, and I had a dog for like a week. But then I ended up leaving the dog with the guy who was letting me stay with him. He just had a studio apartment, right? So it wasn't really a lot of space, and I stayed most of my time out on the streets. And I ended up, man, that was when I was on the streets of Rochester. That was the first time I did Spice. I met these few homeless people that were going around, and every time I see them, whether it was at the place where you can get a meal once a day or at the library or something, they were always rolling up like a little bit of spice, a little bit of tobacco, and then they would roll it up and they would put like a dab on the end of it. But spice is not good. I would not recommend it. So, and that was the first time on the streets of Rochester I did shrooms and acid. One time I met some hippies, because Rochester, like I said, it's a pretty big city itself. It's not a big compared to other cities, but it's big compared to the town I grew up in. So there would be all different types of people rolling through. They had every Thursday night at the main park in town, they had a big band playing, and hippies and other people would come through. Some hippies came through, and I got some acid from them, and I was playing the guitar for hours and hours. It was so fun. And so I was like, man, this is the life. I'm out here on the streets playing guitar, meeting all the people, all the big bands out here, all the people having a great time playing guitar. I'm like, I'm living the life. This is the dream. So then eventually this guy tells me that Fish is coming to town. This hippie, he's like, oh yeah, man, Fish is gonna be here. You should go, man, or whatever. And he's talking about he's hitching a ride there. So boom, I'm trying to hitch a ride there, right? So we both got there, and you know, it's this hippie festival with all these hippies. You know, before the show, they got a whole row of the parking lot, like a little gypsy street market. Sorry if that song is that term is derogative. I don't think it's a politically correct term to use, so sorry about that. So but yeah, so then the show is pretty cool. I met some other hippies, and I was really captivated by these hippies who were following the show in their vans and selling stuff. And I asked to join them. The first night, the group I was trying to join didn't let me join them. They didn't say no, but they didn't have room or something. So then I just put my thumb out after the show. I got a ride to the next show, which was in... It was somewhere else next by, but then the show after that was in Chicago, and I hitched a ride all the way to Chicago. And on the way to Chicago, these guys stopped at this camp for a night, right? And you know, they slept in their truck, but they're like, you can't sleep in our truck because we don't really know you too well, you know. And I was 17 years old now at this time, and so they told me I had to sleep outside. I slept by the fire, but it got so cold, I ended up looking for a place to sleep, and I saw a bathroom, so I went in the bathroom, right? And then some security guard kicked me out. He thought I was just a homeless person. I was homeless, but he was confused, and he just told me to leave. And I was so tired, I didn't protest. I just left and fell asleep outside the camp. And when I woke up, I went back to try to find them, and I told the guy what happened, and he said that they were gone. Some other guy who was still around, I forgot. I think he might have gave me their number. Somehow, and then he told him like, oh, he was like, sorry bro, we didn't find you, we left. And my guitar was in their truck. So I was like, fuck, I gotta get my guitar. So, you know, I went on the highway, put my thumb out, I made it all the way. The show was the next day, and I made it. And then I met up with them in Chicago. I met these girls were out. These like 20-something-year-old girls were out having a girls' night out or something, and I met them on the train somewhere. I was asking them about the train, you know, tickets or whatever. They helped me get one, right? And then one of them brought me home to her crib, and we just chilled, you know. And she was pretty cool. She was telling me about her boyfriend in prison, and she was an artist. She was painted, had all these pictures. And she helped me wash my clothes and some other stuff. Then she dropped me off near the show, and I met all the same people again. You know, it was a 3-day show in Chicago, or 2-day show, I forgot which, but I think it was a 3-day show in Chicago. And then I joined this hippie group, and they let me ride with them in their vans for the rest of the show until Atlanta. We went all the East Coast, all the way to Atlanta. Well, near Atlanta. And then so after the show ends, these guys are all going different ways, and I ended up. Other guys said that who were selling stuff said they were going to this other festival. So I was like, they said they had room, so I went with them. We ended up going around all these small towns outside of Georgia, and it was so funny. I was tripping, and these guys have this business, right? Pies and ties. They put a pie in a jar. They somehow make a pie in a jar. Oh my god, this is so funny remembering this. I haven't thought about this in a while. I'm sorry, this is too funny. And they would put like a tie, like a necktie around it somehow, and call it pies and ties. And they would sell these things. Oh my god. And so, you know, it was like a classic trippy movie, this whole experience with these guys, like the way it played out like a drama. It was crazy. Like one of the first nights, this guy's asking me to he's like, oh yeah, this guy's pretty off, man, tell me if you get any reading on him. And I'm actually tripping, and I'm like all in this, thinking about all this spiritual stuff, because I was 17 years old and tripping. And I was trying to like figure this guy out or whatever, and they're all talking about their crystals or whatever. The next day, I got this phone from Kroger, a grocery store phone. I paid for the service or whatever. I'm calling the lady trying to activate the phone, and I'm on the phone with her. I remember this so much. I was on the phone with her. And she's asking me for a name, right? And I was like, Jesus. And she was like, okay, come on, be serious. I'm like, no, I'm serious. But I'm kind of laughing because I don't know why I was doing this. But she was like, got super serious. She was like, I'm serious. What's your last name? I'm like, what's your name? Jesus. And then she's like, okay, what's your last name then? Jesus. And I said, Christ. And as soon as I said Christ, I said it just like that. I was like, Christ. I just started laughing. And then she starts going off, and she starts going hysterical, like, what's wrong with you, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm gonna have the tap lines get you or something. You know, this lines, this line is something tapped or something. I don't know. I was like, then I just hung up, right? And I called back a little bit later. Crazy times, right? So, let me think now. So then eventually, a few days later, we're in Athens, Georgia. And these guys are arguing with each other. We go to this campsite and we do acid. And these guys give me a burger with blue cheese. And the thing is, I've never had blue cheese before. Okay, so he looks, the guy that I didn't know before that we met up with, you know, this other hippie couple in their van, a man and a woman, he made the burgers, and he says to me something like a line out of the Lost Boys. Okay, I'm eating my burger, and he says something about my burger, and I'm tripping. And I'm like, he's fucking with me. I was like, what's wrong with this burger? So I spit it out, and I put it down. Like, at this point, I was really young and ignorant of the world, because during my teenage years, before they kicked me out, my mother and my stepfather would ground me a lot. I was grounded a lot, so I couldn't go hang out with my friends or leave the house or do a lot of things, you know. I just had to clean the yard, you know, do chores all day, you know, every day for months and months. So I was very young and ignorant of the world. So plus I was on this acid, and he's like, oh, well, why don't you give that burger to my dog? If you don't want it, my dog will eat it. And my dog would gladly eat it. And I was like, I said this like so like seriously. I was like, I wouldn't give the dog something I wouldn't eat. Like, I was really worried for the dog because of how bad this guy creeped me out. And this guy was like, what the fuck is wrong with you, and all this stuff like that. Whatever, right? So this whole night goes down, and by the end of the morning, I'm tripping balls. I'm like, yo, what the hell is wrong with these people? You know, really tripping out. And then the two guys I was with, they get in an argument. One of them goes off with the car, comes back hours later in the morning, and just starts throwing the pies, and it opens the trunk, starts throwing the pies and the ties into the river. You know, and just starts throwing all the pies inside, just breaking them. They're all wasted, all those pies in those mason jars. So they start tripping out. And I don't know what this guy's on, but he's not really communicating coherently. He's like, come on, and the other guy gets in the car. I'm like, dude, are you alright? What's wrong with you? And he's like, no, don't worry about it, just come on. And I was like, what? And I was like, bro, are you safe to drive this vehicle? Like, this is me, 17 years old. I'm just like, I don't know about these guys, you know. And then he's like, just keeps telling me to come on. I'm like, nah, man, I'm good, you guys go. So then they left. And I was just out there in this campsite somewhere near Athens, Georgia. So this has been 20 minutes. I know this has been a lot of details. You know, I could have summed it up a lot shorter, but to me, it is nice reliving, reminiscing some of these memories, thinking about my story, as people have been saying, "What's your story?" So this is my story, and I'm gonna end it here for part one because it's been so long. There's a lot more to go over, but I said I would do part one like 3 days ago, and I still haven't done it. So tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, I'm gonna have part two, and we'll see what happens next on the adventures of Austin. Currently in our story, this is my real life, like I said, just trying to be funny. You know, currently in our story, Austin is 17 years old, outside of Georgia, somewhere, after some bizarre, crazy, trippy experience with blue cheese and pies and ties. Later, I actually realized blue cheese actually does taste like that. I was like, bro, this can't be cheese. I was like, yeah, this. I was like, this is when something we said tripped me out, and then I was thinking like, I've never had cheese that tastes like this. This is not cheese. I'm like, something's wrong with this fucking burger. But the thing is, I just never had blue cheese before, and I guess he didn't know that, or I don't know. Of course, we were all tripping. So, anyways, we'll see what happens next. I'll upload a new video tomorrow. Hello everybody, this is part two of my life story. If you haven't watched part one, it's the video right before this video. Like I said, I have 19,000 followers on TikTok, and a lot of them ask me for my story. They want to know, how did I end up like this and all that. So I said I would do a YouTube videos explaining my life story. Where we last left off, I was stranded in some small town outside of Atlanta, Georgia, after doing all this acid with these guys. Come to think of it, you know, the guy I'm thinking he probably just asked me, how is the burger? But I really never had blue cheese before. And I was tripping so hard, so when he looked at me and asked me that, you know what I'm saying, I took it completely the wrong way. I thought he was trying to poison me or something. Anyways, please, before I continue, please subscribe, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button, click all notifications, so when part 3 comes out, you'll be notified. This is part 2, so we're gonna pick up from where we left off. Before we do though, I wanna talk about my religious upbringing a little bit, because I think it's very relevant, very important. I went to church almost from the time I was 7 to 14 years old. I went to church almost every Sunday and Wednesday, sometimes Sunday nights. They had a church bus that would come around to all the neighborhoods of the poor kids and pick us up. And I was very heavy into it. I was very convinced, because, you know, I was stuck in that environment. And so that's what why I want to bring it up, because broadening my horizons. Once I went to New York and I started traveling around different places in the United States, it really opened my eyes and really broadened my horizons and my understanding of the world. You know, there's some people who can be raised in a small community or small environment like that, and they can be stuck in that indoctrinated mindset for their whole lives, because they've never like broadened their horizons. So that's why I think it's really important to do that. What was I gonna say? You know, if you were born in California or New York, you know, and you grew up there, then you're exposed to a lot of culture, you know, and stuff like that. But if you were raised in the South United States, you know, and some of these rural areas of the United States, then if you don't try to broaden your horizons by learning about other things, or by traveling, then you can get stuck in that small, distinct little culture or dogma that those local people have, and never understand the wider world happening around you. So that to me was the most important thing growing up, is to really understand the truth of the world. When I was 15 and 16, I started watching videos all about the occult, I started watching videos about LSD. I wanted to do LSD so bad until I was 17, and then I did it a few times, and ever since I was 15, I was watching YouTube videos explaining how LSD works and all this stuff. And I would watch videos all about different religions and stuff like that. At first I was scared because I was indoctrinated to believe that, if I'm not 100% placing faith in Jesus Christ, then I'm gonna go to hell. So, it took me a lot, but I eventually broadened my horizons. I'm a materialist now. I still have a personal belief in God, but being a materialist, especially a Marxist, means that I believe that the matter influences the mind, not the mind influencing the matter. There is a part when we observe our world. Marxism explains that we observe our world the way it is, and based on that we get certain ideas, and once we reflect on those ideas, we can come up with a theory and test that on the world. But it does not originate with our consciousness. The matter is superior to the consciousness. The consciousness does not control the matter controls the consciousness. So anyways, so let me get back to the story. So stranded outside some small town in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm walking around the campsite, and then I exit the campsite, and I'm walking down this road. It's like such a small town. I'm not even in the town part, I'm in like the country part. Like there's a store I see like way down the way. Stop at the store, I keep on walking. I walk for a good ways, nothing in sight for a while, until I see that there's a school right beside me. So I'm walking past it. Right when I'm walking past this middle-aged white lady's leaving, and she looks at me, she says something, and I'm telling her I'm just trying to get to town or something. I'm putting my thumb out to the nearest town. And she says, "Oh, sorry, I can't help right now," or something like that. I said, "Oh, no problem," and she goes down the road. I walked a little bit further, and last night one of the hippies, the one, it's funny, the one that like creeped me out, that I got scared, was trying to poison me with the blue cheese because I never tasted blue cheese before. He actually gave me one of these, before all that happened, he gave me one of these things. He said it's called pray. He said that's how you pray to Buddha. He said you gotta light the incense. He gave me an incense stick. So I thought that was pretty cool, trying to figure out the spiritual world at that age and trying to understand how everything works. It was fun, it was cool. I felt like I was doing something, And so at that time, I was like, okay, let me pray to Buddha, So I lit the incense, and then right when I was lighting it, okay, this lady, she came back. And right when I was bending over lighting it, I didn't see her pull up. She pulls up right behind me, right? And then she's like, "Oh, I guess I'm just gonna have to trust you, and you're gonna have to trust me. I want to help you." I said, "Okay, cool." So she starts talking to me about Jesus, and at this time, I just tell every Christian that I'm Christian too, so they won't try to argue with me. And at this point, I still do believe in Jesus, but I don't consider myself a Christian, and I still believe Jesus was a person that existed, and he was very influential, and some people compare the social movements of previous times. All those social movements had an economic basis, so it's a precursor to Marxism. Christianity is. So that's how Marxists understand it. So I'm telling her I'm Christian, talking about how great the good Lord is, blah blah blah. And she's like, "Okay, well, you know what? You should come to my church tonight, And I'm like, okay, I'll go to your church tonight. And she brings me back by her house first, and her daughter's there, and her daughter's around my age, blonde girl, right? And she's asking me, I have my guitar with me, right? She's asking me if I know how to play Nirvana. And I'm like, yeah, I know how to play a Nirvana song or two. And then she's like, oh, well, one day you should learn this Nirvana song and play it for me or something. And when she said that, I was like, okay, you know, but at the same time, I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, is this supposed to be my new life? You know, I go to this church, you know, bring myself into some better position, play some Nirvana on the guitar for this white Christian girl, then we fall in love and get married or something. Oh my God, you know, my mind really runs with it. So we went to church that night. I didn't really fit in with nobody at the church, you know, not even the people my age there, you know. And at this point, you know, I had just done so much acid. I'm really in the spiritual mind, and I'm thinking I'm on some journey, right? So I think I was talking to somebody or something, and then I forgot, but the youth pastor, he tells me, he says, oh, that guy's the sheriff, be careful, or something. He was like, oh, because they saw you over there talking to people over there, and we didn't want you talking to the sheriff. Like, trying to insinuate that I might have some kind of criminal background or history. At this point, I did not, though. So I was very confused by this. When I was younger, I didn't I didn't understand profiling. You know what I'm saying? But now I understand it. Anyways, I'm not upset about it. But anyways, at this point, I was very confused. I'm like, I haven't done nothing wrong here. So I went straight up to the person they told me was the cop or the sheriff or whatever, and I just showed him my social security card. I'm like, this is my name, Austin Joseph Garden. You can look me up. I said, I haven't done nothing wrong. And then he's just looking at me like, what? Because nobody told him. It was just a youth pastor being an asshole. You know what I'm saying? Trying to insinuate or see how I react or something. I don't know. But I was young, tripping so bad. I'm like, I've done nothing wrong, so here's my identification. He's just looking at me weird, and the youth pastor's like, come on, man, come on. So after church, I'm walking down the road, right? Walking out of the parking lot. I'm like, okay, well, that was totally fucking, like, I said, that wasn't helpful at all. Why did I go to that church? I'm like, all I did was have this awkward moment, and then now I'm walking out of this parking lot outside again. The youth pastor pulls by in his pickup truck. He's like, hey man, you know, he's asking me if I want to ride to Atlanta. He says there's a spot called Little 5 Points. He said all the people like me go there, okay? And you know, it's where a lot of homeless people, travelers hang out. So I was like, okay. So I get in the car with him, stop at a gas station, he buys me some snacks and a drink. He gives me some like $40 before he drops me off in Little 5 Points, Atlanta. So I think there's still a video on my Facebook. There's still 4 videos on my Facebook from Little 5 Points, Atlanta, when I was there last year. But this is a beautiful place. Such a beautiful place, guys. Little 5 Points, Atlanta. There's big 5 Points downtown. That's where all the jail and all the magistrate, blah, 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 all that stuff is. But on the east side of town, they have this place called Little 5 Points. It's a little area. You know, they got all the cultural stores there. All the cultural stuff there, you know. And all the tattoo shops and, you know, all the crystal shops and hippies and all the people hang out there, you know. And so it was a pretty cool place. I'm glad the guy brought me there, honestly. You know, even though he was, I think he was judging me too hard or something. I don't know. But anyways, so I'm out there. First night in Little Five Points, Atlanta. I was outside. I was walking around. I saw this one homeless guy out there. I asked him for some weed. Said I'll give him $5 for some weed. So he got this. He said all I got is homegrown. Back then I didn't know too much about weed. You know what I'm saying? I smoked weed a lot, you know, as a teenager, but I was from North Carolina. You know, we don't know too much about weed there because it's not legal. We don't know all the strains, all the sativas and indicas and all this stuff, or where it comes from, how it's grown, none of that stuff. We just know it comes from California. So this guy says he got homegrown. I said, okay. So pulls it out, and now looking back, you know, I've worked on a weed farm before. That was pretty cool. I don't really think it was too much of a farm, but it was just this guy's house. I worked for a weed grower, Trim and Bud, before, and it was basically like shake, not shake. It's shake, but it's not even shake. You know, it's all the leaves. He was giving me all the damn leaves and stuff. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't. It was really just leaves. There was no buds. I didn't see no buds. I don't remember seeing no buds. I forgot. I think I even told him just to take it back or something. I was like, nah, I'm good, man. I'm good. I forgot, right? So I go to the gas station across the street, the Circle K, and this is where I meet Torch. I wonder if he's still around, what he's doing, you know, because this guy was like an older brother to me in the streets, you know. He was homeless too. He was 19 years old, and you know, I was 17. We would be chilling. He was on some heavier things, but I wasn't. When I was 17, all I wanted to do was smoke weed, you know. And a lot of my homeless friends did heavier things, and I saw them do it, but I never did it. Thankfully, you know. And the first night I met him, he comes out of the store and he's like, I got this, I got me a hot dog, a soda, and some chips, because there was like a combo they had at the gas station. He's like, a good American meal, right? And I was like, yeah, that it is. And so he's like, so then I start playing outside the gas station my guitar, trying to make some money, because I'm like, okay, that's default, you know, that's if I don't got nothing to do, I guess I try to do that. It is pretty late though, but I'm like, I got nothing else to do, maybe something will happen. So then these other two homeless guys who know Torch also, they pull up and they're playing. I think one of them has a guitar also, and they're playing. And then they're like, we get kicked out of the gas station parking lot, and then they're like, bro, just come with us over here, you know, we got a spot, we can all chill, play music, you know, we got a good spot. So I was like, all right, cool. We went down the street, and down Euclid Avenue, I believe it's called, and we went behind this building, and I forgot if there were already some homeless people there, or they just, I know more showed up over time, but eventually we had like 15 to 20 homeless people out behind this building in some parking lot playing guitars. We got people talking to each other, you know, in little groups. It's like a regular homeless party, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I could go back, what I'm gonna interrupt this here. Sorry, I had to try to crack my back. It's not comfortable sitting in this chair all the time. So, if I could go back, okay, let me rephrase this way. What I would like to believe, which is no evidence for, and I don't place any faith in, and don't base any of my decisions off of, but what I would like there to be is after you leave this body, maybe after many incarnations, you can go back to any point, you know what I'm saying, and experience it again, you know, because, yo, even though it sounds like trashy, you know what I'm saying, that night, that was a fucking good night, man. That was a good night. You know, I felt like, thinking back now and thinking back what it brings up, what feelings it brings up to me, thinking back now, I felt like it was like being around familiar people again, even though they weren't people I knew at all. But it was being around that sense of community again after this whole crazy experience with these guys I left the fish show with. Because I had some good times with the group I was with, so I didn't really go into that either. When I was following Fish that I talked about in my last video, the band, you know, I told this to some people after, like, when I was 18, I was telling some people, oh, I followed Fish. Like, they thought I was talking about I followed Fish on a river. Like, nah. When I was with all the hippies following the band, they taught me how to sell water, you know, and other stuff. Like, you can get a cooler, get a pack of waters for like $3, for 20 for a pack of water, and then sell all the bottled waters for $1 a piece. So you can make a good profit, but you gotta have a cooler and be at these shows or whatever, right? Like, you gotta walk around for hours before the show, wait right outside the gates as people are lining up. So I was helping them out by doing that for a while. You know, I didn't have a cooler that would let me use the cooler. You know, I would give them some of the money, and at the end of it, you know, one of the guys said, oh, you can just keep the cooler or sell it or whatever. So I ended up selling the cooler, and that's, with all the money I made, that's how I was able to get that phone that I talked about in my last video. So it's about 21 minutes here. We haven't really gotten far since the last story, but I think I touched on some things that I think are really important to understanding my development of what made me who I am today, even though I didn't go really far in the timeline of events. You know, I think I explained in this video a lot of things that have led me to become who I am, and set a foundational understanding for the progression of my ideological understanding of the world. So I'm gonna end it here because it's 22 minutes already. I want to keep on going. There's so much more. I'm still 17 years old in the story. Just got to Atlanta. You know, I'm 25 now. We're 8 years behind. So please stay tuned. Please like this video. Please comment. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click the notification bell right next to the subscription button, and click all notifications. So when part 3 comes out, it's most likely going to come out tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow. Then you'll be notified and you'll be ready to watch it. So thank you guys so much. Anyone who's watched this to the very end, thank you so much. Hello everybody, this is part 3 of my life story. Part 1 and 2 are right before this on YouTube. So last we left off, I was in Little 5 Points, Atlanta, hanging out with all the homeless people outside that night. And we had a good night. Some people were playing guitar, playing music. You know, people are drinking, smoking. Some people are doing other things. I never got involved in that. thankfully. And so it was a pretty good night, and the next day turned into a few weeks. I was just in Atlanta every day. Well, let me back up a little bit just for real quick to tell you that when I was in Rochester, I met other homeless people. I don't know how much I mentioned this in my previous videos. I met other homeless people in Rochester, like I said before, and they taught me how to be homeless, how to ask people for money, how to fly a sign saying you need money, or ask people for spare change, and how to hitchhike and stuff like that. So when I was in Atlanta, I met people who were doing the same thing, other homeless people of all ages. Some of them were my age in their teenage years. Some were young adults, some were older, so homeless people of all ages. In the bigger cities, you see a lot more bigger homeless communities, So, for the next few weeks, I was just doing that, asking people for spare change around that area. And we had this term we call white boxing, or white boxes. It's like when people come out of the restaurants, the popular restaurants around the area, they have like usually a white box or something of leftovers, and you just ask them like, hey, can I have your leftovers? And a lot of times that, restaurants cut a sandwich in half, and there'll be an untouched half of a sandwich or something like that, But, we would just eat after people, even if it was fries or anything that it might have been eaten out of, whatever, we would just eat after people. So it was a humbling experience. It was, I felt really free at the time, because like I said in my previous videos, I was grounded by my parents for a lot of my teenage years. I had to just do chores and stuff. They said, I wasn't allowed to like go hang out with my friends or anything like that. So I felt like I had friends, and I could just do whatever I wanted, within reason, within the law. But a few weeks later, like I think it might have been actually a month and a half to 2 months later, I forget exactly how long it lasted, that I was just hanging out there doing the same thing every day, getting money to get some weed to smoke. Sometimes I would drink with people. There's a few stuff that gone down there. So let me explain a few stories that went down Little 5 Points before I explain how I left Little 5 Points. This one's pretty embarrassing to me to explain, but I think it's cool to talk about or remember and to tell people about. Even though it is very embarrassing, I feel like a dork for this whole thing, right? But to give some context also, on my Facebook, I'm friends with a lot of other communists and socialists and leftists and people who care about social justice. And I met this lady, she's in the UK now, one time, and she was telling me that she was in the 5 Points in like the 80s or 90s or something, and that they would come together against racists and push racists out of there and stuff. And I told her, yeah, I had to say, I remember doing the same thing. And I remember thinking to somebody to just read in the comments, they might be like, oh, that I think I'm just saying that, but not. Here's an instance where that actually happened, right? So there was this older white homeless person messing with this other black homeless person, older black homeless person. The homeless black person wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting on the bench, in Little 5 Points in the Burke area. Now they don't have the benches anymore. I went back like a year or two ago, and this was in 2014, I think. Yeah, 2014. They have benches in Little 5 Points in the little area right in the middle where all the stores are, but now they don't have them anymore. So anyways, he's giving him a tough time. He's like yelling at him and talking shit to him. I forgot if he was telling him to leave or not, but he was saying, I'm pretty sure I remember him saying the N-word, so me and some other people, we go up and we start trying to stand up for this guy, like, yo, back off and all this. They're telling him back off. And me, at this time, I was around all these hippies and I'm believing in all this spiritual stuff. So this is the part where I'm embarrassed and I think I was a dork, because they're standing around him and I'm standing with them, but I'm holding my hand out like this. I had a necklace that had like the Hamza, the Indian like symbol, like the hand with the little. Maybe that's why I did it. Thinking back now, I don't know why, but I just felt like I was like in some power, just holding this like. I feel so, like I said, I feel so much like a dork for even admitting it, but I felt like I was like spiritually doing something, okay? But anyways, so for a while it was a standoff. Nobody was gonna like really beat this guy up because I think it was me, a woman, and some other guy my age or something. But then Brooklyn, this guy from New York who he was black himself. And he was a buff guy, but he was a really cool guy, you know. I was good friends with him, and he was always around. Unfortunately, he passed from this world a few years later. I actually saw it on Facebook. It was so crazy to me, the coincidence. I know Facebook is supposed to show you stuff like that, like of your friends, like that they think you is important, but I was like, wow. Without that random time of logging into Facebook, scrolling down my newsfeed and seeing his funeral invitation thing, then I would have never known, you know. It's crazy. But Brooklyn comes up and he's like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he started, and the guy, as soon as Brooklyn was walking up, the guy starts running away, you know, and he chases him all the way down the block, you know. So that was one story. You know, I had some good friends there. I remember. I forgot if I called him something else, but I think I did call him Andrew. I had him on Facebook, and my buddy Crash. Andrew and Crash were always together. They were real cool. They were like a little bit older than me, but we would all hang out. There's just a lot of people I met there. We had a lot of good times, a lot of deep moments, but some of them are just like crazy, and like some of them were traumatizing moments I had in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to go too deep. Maybe another time I will. But anyways, so let's continue from there. From Little 5 Points. Okay, wait, look, there was one thing more that I can mention. This guy from Trinidad, I met other people from Trinidad before I met this guy, you know, but he had a Rastafari shop in Little 5 Points, and he was real nice to me. You know, I would go in there and talk to him, and one time I was so dirty, but I was wearing flip-flops. He's like, you don't got, he points down at my feet, he's like, you don't gotta be so dirty, you can go wash yourself, you know. He told me about this fountain in this park, like down the road, that's on. He's like, go there early in the morning, just wear your shorts, and you can wash yourself off. And he gave me this soap, this African soap called black soap, you know. And, you know, I would go there and talk to him sometimes and stuff like that. And he was a real cool guy, you know, like an elder figure, you know, in the community, you know. He was real cool, you know. So a few years later, when I went back to Little 5 Points in 2021, he had died also, and I didn't find out until I went to the shop, and it was some woman working, and I asked them about him, and turns out they had a shrine for him in the shop, you know, and I put a little offer in there, and it was very emotional, you know, knowing that he passed on, Cause you know, thinking back, like he told me something he told me one line that always stuck with me and that I've repeated so many times. He said, no matter what, you always gotta take care of yourself first. He said, you can't help anybody until you help yourself. So you always have to put yourself first. And you know, self-preservation is a real thing. You know, we gotta make sure that we can survive. You know, so that impacted me for a lot of years. I'm like, before I became a communist, you know, I always just thought about my own self-preservation, you know, but now I figured out I can still contribute towards, you know, a greater cause, you know, but of course I always gotta make sure that I'm able to survive, and everybody needs to do that, you know. So you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, you know. But so that was another good experience. Later when in 2021 when I went back to 5 Points, the woman there, she gave me some of the black soap, which was real nice of her, and I gave her some of my pamphlets that I wrote about communism and talked to her, and we had a real emotional discussion, you know. So okay, let's go back. It's 2014. I'm in Atlanta, and then one night, you know, we're just chilling on one of the benches in the little, it's called like the little park area. It's called the park. It's not really a park. It's just like a little triangle sliver where all the 5 points of the roads come together, a little triangle sliver where there's some trees, and it's right next to the stores. And there was some benches there, but the benches are gone now. But at this point, the benches were still there. So we're chilling on the benches, and this white boy comes up, and he looks. I feel like he's younger than me, but he's actually older than me, you know. But just the way he acted and the way he looked, I felt like he was younger than me, you know. But apparently he was in college, you know, or something. And he's asking us if we can smoke around here. We're like, yeah, roll up, you know. So he starts trying to roll this spliff, right? A spliff is a mixture of tobacco and weed, and he's trying to roll it up, and he's taking so long, like 5 minutes, right? And he's like, and then he starts asking if we can go somewhere else or something, and then some of the people were like, y'all stupid. I think Brooklyn was like, y'all stupid, man. Fuck that, man. I ain't going nowhere. He was smart, but me and two or three other people went with him behind the stores in the parking lot, and he finally finished rolling it up, and he takes a few puffs. He passes it to me, and I only get like 2 puffs, and it's mostly tobacco. But I'm like taking these 2 puffs, and then all of a sudden I see a cop roll by, and then the white boy, the kid, he just jumps up and he yells, "Police!" and just starts running. And the cop just pulls right over and gets out of the car and says, "Hey, stop!" And then he stops. So me and the other guys pretty much think it was some kind of setup or something, but I have no idea. Well, one guy did have a warrant there, so maybe. But the way he acted, like, it seemed like a setup. Like, how could you act that stupid, you know? Because the cop was just riding by, you know, he wasn't bothering anyone or nothing. So as soon as he did that, I dropped you know, looking back, maybe I could have had time to eat it, but I didn't think that fast. You know, that would have been the best option if I would have been able to, but he probably would have saw me or something. But I just dropped it, and there's a lot of leaves under me. I didn't think they would find it. Bruh, this cop brought 2 more cops out there. They looked for like 45 minutes and finally found this fucking spliff that barely had any weed in it. It was mostly tobacco, and they're like, "Oh, it looks like tobacco." Like, nope, it smells like weed. I see a little bit of weed in it. I'm like, man, for real? Y'all really about to charge us for that tiny bit of weed? But yes, we went to jail. We went in the paddy wagon. You know, to someone raised in California, that would seem crazy. Okay, 17 years old, I'm getting put in the paddy wagon. You know, the big little vehicle that they put the people that they're taking to jail in. You know, with 2 or 3 something other adults. You know, and we're going to jail because a tiny bit of weed and a little bit of spliff, 4 people going to jail. So it's crazy, you know, the laws are so far behind in the southern states of the United States. And it's like that in North Carolina too. I would still go to jail at that time, probably in North Carolina, but North Carolina now it's where it's just a ticket if it's just possession. But in Atlanta, I don't know if they decriminalized it yet, If they haven't yet, then it's still you go to jail for just, they can take you to jail for just a little bit of weed. Anyways, went to jail, and let me try to think. I forgot if the times. No, I think it was the second time I went to jail that this a lot of the stuff I remember happened. Cause I have a lot of memories from, I think that was when I was in jail for like 2 weeks. But so this is a time where, you know, I gotta give credit to my mother and stepfather at this point. You know, it might have been better if they would have just let me stay there, you know, because it was a lot more hassle in the long run. But because it would have only been like a week in jail versus having to pay all that money and like $1,000. It was like $700. When I was 17 years old, you know, the only time they ever tried to help me out for getting in trouble. My mother, you know, she and my stepdad helped me out, you know. They got me out like a day or two later. And they wanted me to come back to North Carolina, right? After I stayed, they had a friend that lived outside Atlanta somewhere, right? One of my stepdad's friends growing up moved out there. So they wanted me to stay with them and then until my court date, and then come back to North Carolina. So I had no other option. So I did. I stayed with them for a few weeks. For a few weeks, I was in. I forgot what even town it was. It was like one of the towns outside of Atlanta, small town. I don't think it's Gainesville. I think that's something else, but it was something like that. And after a day or two there, I walked up to Sonic. I was walking around. I saw a bunch of teenagers hanging out in Sonic. I was like the hangout spot. Suppose I walked up. I was asking them like, where's the weed at? You know, and they were like, we started talking. They ended up being able to help me out. I started hanging out with them, and I hung out with those kids for like the next few weeks until my court date. I never saw them again, but they were pretty cool, you know. And I'm glad I found them, because without that, it would have been a much harder 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So I went to my court day, and they wanted to give me community service. They said they could transfer it to North Carolina. I went to North Carolina. I never even followed up with it. You know, it would come back to bite me later. I'll tell you about that. It might not be this video, probably the next video. So went back to North Carolina, and I remember sometimes on this point, it wasn't for that long. It was for like a month or 2 or 3. Okay, I think I got back to North Carolina in November and left in February. And for a time, at this point, my mother and stepfather actually were living in this, like, what they call the pool house. It's just this little like structure right next to this pool that my stepdad's parents had outside their house, you know. And because they sold their house that they got from Habitat for Humanity. It's a long story. So they were living with his parents, and I was staying there for a few months. And I spent some time with some friends I had growing up, but I had this dream, this vision of going out to California and being a musician or something, you know, just going to California. Something about California really drew me. Really wanted to go there in the first place, but it didn't happen and I ended up in jail or whatever. So this time I set out with a mission to go to California. So at this point, I'm 17 years old. It's February 2015. I turned 17 the last year in June. So I would turn 18 in a few months. And from that time, from February to June of 2015 is when I went from, the first thing I did is I actually went on a freight train because I met some homeless people who travel by hopping on freight trains, not passenger trains, like trains that carry supplies, and so I learned how to do it from them, but I never really did it before. They told me how to do it and everything, but I didn't hop out with them anywhere, train hoppers. But so I already knew how to do it, and I was actually gonna go hop out of my hometown, New Bern, North Carolina, where I grew up, with a friend. And this guy says he's gonna go with me, and I was pretty excited because it was a whole adventure I had the first time, and I thought it would be great to show somebody that adventure, But he ended up chickening out. Okay, so it was pretty depressing. I was all on my own, and it rained. It rained on my way to Raleigh, so it was a good thing I brought a tarp and a sleeping bag. I had a big backpack, and so I put the tarp over me when the rain, and I didn't actually get too wet, but it was when I had to leave the train and it was still raining, and I was in Raleigh and I was walking to try to find some shelter under the rain. I got pretty wet, and that's how I got to Raleigh from New Bern, from a freight train. It was like a car carrying these railroad rocks. Okay, and I climbed up into it and went into a corner of it, and it's pretty fun. It was pretty fun. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Probably not. I would if like I had a reason to. I don't think I have a reason to. If I was traveling, still had no homeless, but right now I have a lot of TikTok followers. People are helping me out with the motel. I don't see a reason to try to hop a train, but basically what I'm trying to say, it was a fun experience. It was a really fun experience. It's nothing you can really describe too well. It's something you can only experience riding on a freight train, and so, and in this journey I actually do some more train hopping. And I actually have what they call a road dog in the homeless person traveler community, the train hopper community. I had a road dog for a trip. It was pretty nice, and I'm gonna tell you guys about that in part 4 of my life story. I don't know if this has been the most interesting addition to the series, but it is a step in the chronological order towards the present. So when we started off, I was born. Okay, we started part 1, explained to you my early life. Now almost 17 years old, almost 18 in like 4 or 5 months, setting out on a journey to go to California to pursue my dreams, and so part 4 is going to be out real soon, maybe even tomorrow. If you have any opinions, anything you want to ask me about or talk about or remark on, please comment, please like, please subscribe, please turn on notifications with that bell icon. Like I said, I don't think this has been the most interesting part. I'm waiting for us to get the next part might be pretty interesting, because this part I was basically explaining how, I went back home for a few months and then set out. Next part is going to be my whole journey from North Carolina, 17 years old, just homeless on my own 2 feet, making it all the way to California. And at one point I get a guitar, and that's a pretty cool story. So yeah, please watch the next one when it comes out, part 4. This has been part 3. Hello everybody, this is part 4 of my life story, okay? So I've been doing this series. A lot of people on TikTok, who follow me on TikTok or view my TikTok, they want to know my life story. They say, you know, what's your story? So here is the series on my story. This is part 4. So let's get right into it, okay? So the last part of the story, where did I leave off? Where the fuck did I leave off? I think I had just gotten to that town outside of Atlanta, and I chilled with those kids for a while, those teenagers that were around my same age. When I was there, I was still 17 at the time, because I had just gotten arrested and bailed out by my mother all the way in North Carolina just for a little spliff, a tiny bit of weed. And so, yeah, I was chilling in that town for a while. It was pretty cool people there, you know. But then after a few weeks, I went back to North Carolina. Okay, so at this point, it's around November 2014. And I had come back to New Bern, North Carolina, the town I grew up in most of my life. So, you know, of course, when I first got back, I went to, honestly, I think when I first got back, I didn't go straight to my parents' house. And I think that upset them, you know. I really think that upset them. They weren't prepared for that. They had their friend's mother drive me back, and I can't exactly remember, but I might have stopped there first. I might have, but I think I might have went somewhere else directly after. I have no idea, but I saw my mother and my stepfather and my siblings and my stepfather's parents. Like I said, at this point, they had lost their house. So before I go too much further, let me briefly explain my family's financial situation, because and you know how my mother raised me. You know, I saw this other person talk about online how my father was only 20 years old when he had me, or something like that, and we raised each other or something. And I'm like, okay, I guess people having children young is a thing that people look at and say, okay, this is a factor that influenced my upbringing. And I never really thought about it too much, you know, until I saw that. So I thought, okay, you know, yeah, my mother was 17 when she had her first child. My sister, Samantha, my older sister, and she had it with this guy named Joe, okay, Joe Capello, in Long Island, New York. Coincidence, right? She gets divorced, all that, yada yada. A couple months later, the marriage didn't last long at all. A couple months later, she had me at around 18 or 19, okay, and she had me with another Joe Tamargo. So she went from Joe Capello to Joe Tamargo. Something about the name Joe, you know, something about the name Joe really got her going, I guess. I don't know. Joe Mama, no. You know, it's actually funny. Let me take a break to say that joke. You know, it was years later, okay? Years later than where I'm at in my story right now. I think I was 21 or something, 21 or 22. And we're at this Christmas party. And my mom's scolding me. I remember it so much. My mom was scolding me so badly because I had called a lot of people in the family, and I had said, you know, that day or the previous day, and I had said, hey, Joe's coming to your house today. You know, and I wasn't thinking about my father, Joe, in New York. I really wasn't. Okay, every few years, I remember this joke, and I gotta tell it to everybody I know because I think it's so funny. And I try to find people who I don't think have heard of it before. You know, you tell someone, hey, Joe said he's coming to your house today. And then maybe you add a little something extra to make it more believable. They say, Joe who? Say, Joe Mama. So I told, my brother was one of the people I told that joke to the day before. And my brother, my younger brother, Preston, I don't have any older brothers. I'm the oldest brother, you know, of the family. But anyways, my brother, he's about a year and a half younger than me. He's in the Marines now. You know, he's always been a real straight cut kid, you know, very responsible and all this. And so, you know, I remember when I was a teenager, I had this phone that my father in New York had sent me. He actually sent it down to my friend's house down the street, you know, and my friend and their mom got it in the mail and let me have it. And so I was talking to my father on the phone in my room, but I shared the room with my brother. I went to go use the bathroom, and my father tells me that somebody was on the phone saying hello, and he just didn't say anything. I figured out it was my brother Preston, who was now acting like he's asleep. And then so after that, I hang up and I talk. You know, I wasn't good at communicating. You know, if I could have gone back in time, I think this would have been a great moment where we could have bonded. I could have talked to him, but instead my brother just talks bad about my father, and then I think we got in some fight or something. So maybe if he would have spoke to Preston, then it would have been better off, but he didn't say anything. So yeah, so years later my mother told me that when I told my brother that joke, that his girlfriend, his fiance at the time, said his face got all red and he was at a restaurant and he just walked out of the restaurant, you know, because he thought that meant that his father, because at this point in time, my brother was, you know, about to go in the Marines, just graduated from high school, you know, had a fiance now. And it was like a very, very important time in his life, you know, where he's becoming a man. And I guess I didn't really consider that. And so he got to him, it was like, oh, this motherfucker's gonna come now, right now. And it hurts my heart because I almost think that there was some hope there, and some excitedness here there, even though it was very under all the feelings of hurt, you know. So when he found out it was just a joke, I think that might have hurt him worse, you know. So I feel bad about that. You know, there's a lot of times in my life, actually, you know, even though this isn't continuing the story, I think there's relevant stuff about my life. And I want to say here, because I do care about my family, right? So there's a lot of times in my life, in my childhood, I specifically remember, you know, just not being able to communicate to my brother or some other of my siblings in the way that, you know, in a way that I could reach them, you know, or in a way that I could properly explain myself, you know, and we could bond, you know, and I think some, you know, I have a mood disorder, bipolar, and I think there's more to it than that, because that's what I have officially, but I never went back to any, you know, institution to try to get no more diagnosis. But I think back and it really hurts my heart sometimes, the bonding that we could have had, but there was a disconnect to where I just wasn't able to communicate properly. You know, and I know that now, and I've done a lot of work to communicate better to people. So it's something I really realized. Like, I'll give you an example. One time, I have no idea why. Even now to this day, though not as much. When I was a child, it happened more often. I would get random nosebleeds. You know, so one time, me and my brother have to be by ourselves at our stepfather's parents' house all day. Nobody else is there. and I had stayed up all night playing video games, so I felt I was sleeping all day. Okay, so the person who was supposed to be babysitting us, our aunt, wasn't gonna be back till like late that night, and so my brothers, I remember periodically waking up through the day, and my brother Preston, he's just sitting on the couch, and right next to me, just looking off into the distance, just looking everywhere. And thinking back, I feel bad because this could have been a moment where I was there for them as a big brother. There's a lot of moments where I felt like I could have been there for him as a big brother, but I failed, and that really hurts me to this day because I didn't understand at the time, and I think if I was more properly able to communicate and understand, when I was younger, then I could have been a better big brother. And I think that did ultimately influence my younger brother to pursue that drastic route of becoming a Marine. I mean, it in one sense is very beneficial to him. It gave him a life and stability that he wasn't gonna find in old New Bern, North Carolina, at Mama's house. So God bless him. But okay, so we're at my stepfather's parents' house. And I got a nosebleed in the middle of when I was in the middle of the day. I was still trying to sleep though, so I just walked over to the trash can in the kitchen and just hovered my my nose above the trash can and just let it drip because I was so tired. I just didn't feel like communicating with anyone. And my brother is beside me. And he, as soon as this happened, he's running over. He's like, Austin, what's going on? Austin. And he's trying to get me to respond, but I just didn't feel like responding to him. I was perfectly aware of my situation, but I just didn't feel like responding to him. So I just stayed there, my arms hanging over and the blood dripping and I just imagined like, man, that must have been like, we're like 12, 11, 12, 13 at the time, I just imagine it must have been, he must have been very confused. I just wish I would have communicated with him better, because, I think it would have been, it really would have helped things a lot. But anyways, let me stop regretting not being a bigger brother to my brother, and let's move on with the story, okay? I went on a whole tangent there. So I stayed in New Bern for a few months, and on Thanksgiving, I actually spent Thanksgiving at one of my friends' houses. My parents were mad, but this time I still didn't want to really hang out with them that much, even though they weren't trying to ground me. And they acknowledged my sovereignty as an adult, even though I was still 17. I still didn't want to spend too much time with them. And so after a few months, so let me go back to explaining that part. So my mother was 19 or 20 when she had me, like 21, 22 when she had the rest of her kids. My father was like a year or two older than her. Then they got divorced. When they moved down to North Carolina the first time, then they moved back to Long Island, New York. Then they moved back again. My mom moved back again a year later after she divorced my father. And long story short, a few years later, she marries this guy who's 7 years younger than her. So I saw this person make a post about how her father was like 20 years old and he was a young parent, and I'm like, okay, my mother was a young parent when she had us. Then a few years later, she's like, okay, I need me a young man. And so both of them, my mother and stepfather, I didn't think had much experience in raising children. But you know what? I gotta say they did try and give it their all. When we were kids and we weren't, when we became adults, it seemed like they pretty much gave up on life. Okay, they stopped paying their electricity, their water bill for good. Like there was times when they would go a year without water, electricity at their house, and the only reason they had a place to live is because my stepfather's parents, my stepfather's mother was a nurse, she's a retired nurse now. His father worked for the Department of Transportation for the state for 45 years and retired. So they're not rich, but they worked hard for the system and got their benefits of retirement and managed your money well, you know. So they help out their kids. They bought my mom and stepfather a trailer out in the rural part of town. You know, they're pretty cheap out there. And but they I don't even know if they still have that place, because they stopped paying rent too. They wouldn't pay my stepfather's parents anything. They would just stay there, and with no electricity or water either. And they wouldn't even cut the grass. So periodically, so they didn't get fined, my stepfather's father had to come and cut the grass for them because they wouldn't even cut the grass. Okay, so let me get back to the story. So February, I remember it was around the time of the changing of the zodiac seasons, because I was real big into it then. Like February 21st to 22nd, I set out. And like I said last time, my friend said he was gonna come with me. And he ended up chickening out. Okay, so I was by myself. I think I explained this in my last video. It was raining, and I had a good thing. I had a big backpack. Like I said in my last video, I had a tarp, and I put the tarp over me while it was raining. But then whenever the train stopped, it was still raining, so I had to get out in the rain. And I was walking around in the rain. The first guy that saw me, he said, "Man, are you good, man?" And I was like, "Man, I just got here." Asked him where it was. He says, "You in Raleigh, man?" And he was like, "Here, man," gave me $7, and he went about his way. So I stood outside the gas station, the grocery store for a while, and I was just out there asking for money, you know, doing the Spanish thing that the homeless people had taught me up north, you know. And so eventually this guy comes along, and he says, long story short, he offers me, he says I could stay at his crib. He's got an apartment for $20 a night. Okay? You know, I can't stay there during the day, but him and his girlfriend got a crib or whatever. And I think he's in his late 30s, early 40s, something like this, right? I'm like, okay, cool. I go back to his place. He's got a girl, his girl's in like her 20s, okay? And for the next few days, he tried to help me get some work there. I helped him with this other guy. It was really weird because he was working for this old white guy. It wasn't really work. He would go over to this old white guy's house, and the old white guy would just say, I mean, he was white too, but the old white guy would just say, yeah, empty out the trash cans, please. Empty out the trash cans in the house. And he'd be like, can you move those leaves? Basically just coming over to be some pity servant for some old man who doesn't want to do anything himself and wants to help some poor person out, I guess. Anyways, I earned some money helping that guy do random tasks around this old guy's house. And so I got enough for a bus ticket to Atlanta, because I'm like, that's my next destination is Atlanta. I wanted to go back to the city where I just spent all those months, met a lot of friends. I felt like I would be able to, you know, maybe even meet some other travelers there, some other people who were hopping trains and who wanted to travel with me, because my ultimate goal was to go all the way to California. So one time when I was there, when he wasn't there, his girl was kind of coming on to me, but nothing happened. You know, I just left. Because at the time I was 17 years old, you know. And like I said, I was very ignorant of the world, because my mother and stepfather growing up, they really did keep me in an isolated environment. Even though I went to public school, you know, I was for many months, and for much of the time when I was a teenager, I wasn't allowed to be on the internet, to play video games, to go on social media or anything, or to go outside and play with my friends or anything like that, because sometimes my grades were bad, sometimes they caught me smoking weed, you know, to try to cope with all the stress. But I guess they were very against me smoking weed. And you know, just little things like that. So so yeah, I got the bus ticket. I headed to Atlanta and I got back to Atlanta. Now I'm 17 years old, back in Atlanta, and I spent a few more months there. Like a week or two after I got there, my mother is telling me that these bonds people in Atlanta just want to talk to me about my case or whatever. You know, that they do something with my case because I didn't finish my community service. So they told me to meet me, and they met me outside Little Five Pizza, you know, in Little 5 Points. And you know, at the time I was 17, I was young and ignorant. I didn't understand that they were just gonna take me to jail. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to take you to jail. I'm like, fuck. So that's some advice for anyone. If the bonds person ever says they just want to talk, they actually just want to take you to jail. So I went to jail. I had to spend 2 weeks in jail, and you know, which was the original sentence anyway. So that whole bonding out didn't really do anything. But I had some good experiences in that jail, and as part of the ending of this video, I'm gonna tell some stories from my time in Atlanta jail. So when I first got there, these guys were making this whole, I forgot if this time they were making like the swole where you put all the ramen noodles and all the other ingredients in it, you know, or if they were making some juice drink or something. But they were making one or the other. When I walked up to them one time, and I was 17 years old, I was the only white person that I seen there, you know. And I forgot if I asked or something, or they offered. They said, hey, you know, give me half your food at dinner, and you can have some of this. So I was like, okay, that's a deal. And they gave me some, and I ate with them. And then at dinner time, you know, I'm ashamed to say this now, but I was looking around and I could not identify them, you know, because it was like hours ago, you know, and I had just got there. I hadn't really met anyone. I just remember when I first got here hours ago, these two guys, and I couldn't identify them because, you know, please forgive me, but I was the only white person there. All the rest were black people, and I'm not saying at all that all black people look the same at all, because I have, you know, I know I can identify people and their races and confuse me, okay? But at the time, I don't know why, I seriously could not remember who exactly the guys were. So I'm looking around, I'm walking through the whole table area, and I'm just looking at everyone trying to find them. And then this guy comes up to me. He's like, he's like, oh, right here, come on. He he's like, oh, I'm not. So I said, oh, I'm sorry, man, I couldn't find you. You know, I couldn't find you. And he's like, oh, he said, oh, you good? So I start dividing up half of everything of my food. And the other guy, who was the actual guy who I owed the half my tray to, he comes up right as this guy starts doing this, and he's like, man, get the fuck out of here, man. He's like, man. He's like, man, it was me who you gave it to. I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry, man. Like I forgot who it was. And then he's like, man, you good? Come sit with us, man. And so I went to his table. I start trying to take my food off my tray. And he's like, man, nah, eat your fucking food, man. He was like, eat. Now I'm getting my stutter. He was like, eat. Now I'm about to stutter. Maybe I need to slow down, take a deep breath. He was like, eat your food, man. He said, I don't want your food. He said, I don't want your food. I want you to eat, you know, and I really appreciated that. That meant a lot to me. And so for the next 2 weeks, week and a half, you know, I sat with them, you know, and they were real nice guys, real cool with me, you know. This jail actually had a basketball and a basketball hoop. You know, a few years later in North Carolina, when I was in jail, and any other jail I've been to, they never had no basketball goals. So that was really fun, you know. At any point during the day, you could just go outside and play basketball. A lot of people didn't play basketball. A lot of people would just sit inside and watch TV, which was even better because most of the time you could just go out there and shoot some hoops by yourself, you know. So, you know, at the time, you know, I had just been through all this spiritual hippie stuff. So I'm thinking I know the spiritual knowledge. And, you know, me and this other guy in the basketball court are arguing about God, you know, and I'm talking about God is everything, everywhere, you know. And so it got a little bit more deep than that, but I'm not going to go further into the religious discussion here. Anyways, that same guy did something later, like a few days later. It was Sunday, and these ministers had come in from a local church, and I always remember these ministers. They were so tall, so very tall, old black men, very tall, you know, and both of them were very tall yet looked very healthy, very tall and skinny and lengthy, but looked very healthy. You know, they didn't look like anorexic or nothing. They were just skinny, you know, but they looked healthy, you know. And they were lecturing us about drinking water, making sure you drink water. That's one of the lesser things, like the least important thing I think they spoke about. But they were talking about water. But they said something else that really stuck to me always. They said you're supposed to actually drink water like an hour before or an hour after you eat. You're not actually supposed to drink water while you're eating because it could harbor digestion. Now, to this day, I need to verify it. I need to go online and check it out. To this day, that perplexes me because I honestly think, like, aren't you supposed to drink when you're eating to make the food go down easier? That's what I've always thought. But apparently, they even had a little pamphlet talking about how you're not supposed to eat, you know, you're not supposed to drink an hour before or an hour after you eat. And part of me has always thought that this must be some old person thing, you know, like when old people need to worry more about their digestion and they just thought everybody should worry about it more. But I still do not understand it because, you know, when you go to a restaurant, they give you a drink with your meal. So if anyone has any answers to this, please let me know because I've been too lazy to Google it, I guess. Anyways, so they're telling us a lot about the spirit, heaven, you know, and all this, and about the spirits and the, you know, the battle between the dark spirits and all this stuff. So in the middle of it, you know, in this jail, in the jail in North Carolina where I come from, that I went to a few years later, like everybody had to stay locked behind their cells and the preacher would preach to everybody. But in this jail, if you want to go to church on Sunday, you all went into a special room with the two preachers. So, you know, you didn't have to go to church if you didn't want to. So we went in the room with the preachers, and after they're talking to us for a while, the same guy who I was arguing about God with just randomly comes in the room, and he starts going on this rant, and I forgot how he started it. But he starts talking about how heaven is real. He's like, heaven is real, and it's a whole layer of purple. It's purple everywhere. He's like, I've seen it, and he goes on this whole rant, and it always stuck to me, right? And he goes really on this long rant about this purple energy, right? And then after he left the room, and of course I did know about the chakras, how purple is the 7th chakra, you know, and you know, none of us said anything, and then he walked out, and I looked at one of the preachers, I looked at the other. One of the preachers was smiling, the other one, I looked at the other one, and he just had a stern face, you know, just a regular face. And then the second one, when I looked at him, he's like, there was a lot of truth to what that brother had just said. And then the other one was like, yep. And I always remember that. I always remember that moment. You know, it was something that could have been in a fucking movie. I swear to God. The way that it was so mystifying. The way that this guy comes in after we had a heated religious debate a few days ago, and then we're having church, and he comes in and proclaims this great vision of heaven that he's seen, and then the preacher's like, well, there's a lot of truth to that what that brother had just said. And I was like, and then I believed it. I was like, I didn't say anything, but I was like, okay, that's an affirmation, confirmation, it's all true. You know, so that was pretty interesting. So I'll finally end this video, because I usually only make these videos like 20 minutes long. Okay, so this has been a very long one. So I'll end this video explaining when I got out of jail, because there's still a lot more to cover here. There's still so much more to cover here. I haven't even left Atlanta yet for the second time. So I'm gonna explain getting out of jail. So I got out of jail like a day early, you know, and I took to the downside. So I'm supposed to get out tomorrow. He's like, it looks like it's your lucky day, you know, but it's actually because they have so many inmates, they gotta release people early, you know, especially for petty crimes. You know, they shouldn't be even bringing people to jail for no damn spliff with a tiny bit of weed in it anyways, but whatever. I'm not gonna continue complaining about it. But anyways, so I get released, and I'm in 5 Points downtown. That's what somebody in the comments actually commented on this video, and on one of my last videos of the series, talking about how when they were homeless in Atlanta, they were at 5 Points downtown, and said it was a scary place. And it actually, you know, I would hesitate to call it scary, but it is a dangerous place. You know, in a place that you have to be careful. You gotta be careful in big 5 Points, okay? They got motherfuckers from all different types of gangs out there. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers huddled by the trash can, by the fire, burning trash can, ready to get what you got if they catch you slipping. You know what I'm saying? They all out there. But and little 5 Points. You know, little 5 Points isn't always some safe haven either. You know, a lot of stuff goes down there, and East Atlanta is actually right just down the road from Little 5 Points. It's technically almost East Atlanta, Little 5 Points, but Little 5 Points is a completely different area than Big 5 Points downtown. Big 5 Points downtown is like, it's just there's none of the culture or nothing of it. It's just mainly government buildings, and other homeless people in gangs, people trying to pull schemes, and very important business people walking around during the day. But so it's a very different place than Little 5 Points. But when I first got released, this older black guy I met was homeless also, and I would hang out with a lot of homeless people there. So it wasn't out of the norm for me to just walk up to this black homeless guy and ask him what's going on. And then so he's like, man, we're trying to get some bub, man. And so he's like, man, he sends me on a little mission or something. He's like, man, go try see if you can get like $3, man. He's like, I got 2. You know, we're gonna make this work. I was like, okay, you know. I will go around, start trying to raise $3 somehow. I get back to him. He has a little bit of weed. He's like, okay, man, come on, let's smoke a little bit of weed, man. He's like, you hungry, man? You hungry? Pulls out this thing. He's got a bunch of lunch meats and bread. I'm like, nah, man. No, actually, this time I was like, yeah, man, hell yeah, man. I just got out of jail. He's like, okay, man, you make yourself a sandwich, man. And he starts putting the weed in the pipe. I'm making myself a sandwich. Start eating the sandwich. He passes it to me. It was a really nice night. And then I was like, all right, man, I gotta get back to Little 5 Points. He's like, all right, man. So I went back to Little 5 Points. When I got back to Little 5, I had to walk there. I don't know how far of a walk it is. Maybe an hour or 2 or 3. I don't know. Got back to Little 5 Points, and I had just been in jail for 2 weeks, you know. So no weed, no alcohol, because I was drinking sometimes when I was in Atlanta too, even though I was only 17 years old. No alcohol, no weed, no tobacco, nothing in that jail, no good food either. So when I got to Little 5 Points, I went overboard. I went crazy, okay? Every single person that passed me, I was in the main little park area. Every single person that passed me that had a leftover food box, I would ask them for it. And I would start eating that motherfucker. These nice burgers, I don't eat. Next thing I saw some pizza, hey, can I have your leftovers? Eating the pizza. and then every time I saw some cigarette, can I have one of your cigarettes? Smoking a cigarette. Every time I try to raise money for some weed, smoking the weed. Every time I see the homeless person drinking, let me get a sip of that. Let me throw it on the beer. I was drinking, smoking, eating everything, trying to get everything, trying to get all of these sensations I haven't had, all these endorphin rushes I haven't had in 2 weeks. And then I got the biggest headache that I can remember. The biggest headache. So, oh my God, it was such a big headache. You know, I get headaches periodically, but this was a killer headache, I'm telling you. Like, I had consumed and did way too much. I was eating so much, smoking so much, dude. It's too much. You know, my head just started killing me. So then I go to the store, okay? I go to the gas station. I stand outside and I start asking people if they can get me headache medicine. So this hippie guy comes. One of the first people that comes is this hippie guy and his girlfriend, okay? And the hippie guy says, oh, you don't need medicine. You just need to go meditate, you know, and try to find out why the pain is there or something. So I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. Because I was very susceptible to the spiritual nonsense, you know, and the idea that you can influence your reality with the power of your mind. So I was like, okay, you're right. So I go 2 blocks away. I sit under a tree. I start to lay down and I start to meditate. I literally sat there for like an hour, maybe more, and it only got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was like, yo, fuck this fucking hippie. I was like, that fucking hippie. I was so fucking mad. I got up and I hit the ground and said, fuck that fucking hippie. I went back to the gas station. And I started asking people again. I'm like, please, can you get me some headache medicine? It's so bad, please. And then finally, like, second or third guy goes and gets me some headache medicine. It only took like 5 or 10 minutes. You know, I just wasted a whole hour of my headache getting worse and worse because some fucking hippie guy sold me this bullshit. sold me, as in not really selling me something, but told me something that I believed, that I shouldn't have believed. Anyways, so yeah. So that's the story of my first day out of jail in Atlanta. So I'm sorry guys, this has been such a long addition to the story, and in the beginning of this video I really explained a lot of my upbringing instead of continuing from where we left off, and then I cashed people up. I explained stuff that I already explained in the last video for some of it, but you know, like I said, some people don't understand. I've had a very complicated life, okay? And if people really want to know me and understand me for who I am, which, you know, I will be really impressed if there are actually people who want to do that, then I think all this information is relevant, you know, and I think every piece of the story really adds to it, to really understand me as a person, you know, and my story. So in part 5 of my story, I really thought that this part 4 of the story I was gonna explain me going all the way from Atlanta to California, and at least start explaining when I was in California at 17, but we didn't even get close to there. And I almost want to keep on going, because I'm like, I might as well just keep on fucking going, but at the same time this is already going to take like hours to upload, and you know, I doubt anyone wants to watch much longer, you know, for right now. You know, they might want to watch another video later, but this has been a very long video. So if anyone's watched all of this to the end, God bless you so much. Thank you so much for listening, and I feel very grateful that you find this interesting. So God bless you. Please subscribe, please like, please comment on any part of the story, any part of it, and give your opinion if you can. That would be much appreciated. So yeah, appreciate you guys so much. God bless you.